it's Pix here for another video on my channel, and today we're going to be talking about Pokemon standard rotation as well as set legality. So let's step into this because I know a lot of you will have questions over this. Let's get started. As we all know, the Pokemon Trading Card game has been around since the 90s, and a lot of people have been playing since that day and are still playing now. I unfortunately started my journey a little bit late. I really wish I hadn't, but I did, even though some of us have been collectors since the 90s as well. So here we have two Charizard cards. We have the one from the 90s, and this one was released in 2024 because this is the Paldean Fates version. Both Charizard, both amazing, but in a standard Pokemon format, we can only play this one. And I'm going to explain to you why. For those of us that do play the trading card game, we will understand why we can only play certain cards, and this is because our cards have regulation marks. So that Charizard that I showed you, right here, the regulation mark on this Charizard is G. I know you can't see that very well, but I will put the regulation mark right here. And that means that this Charizard is legal for play. The 90s Charizard that I showed you doesn't have a legality mark, but that's because it was sort of released so long ago that it is no longer viable for play. Regulation marks were released during the Sword and Shield series, starting with regulation mark D to tie in with the sort of Asian releases that were going on in Japan. So when we were playing, we had cards like Scoop Up Net, we had cards like the Inteleon engine with Sobble, Drizzle, and Inteleon with Shady Dealings and things like that. If you know what I'm talking about, you will understand how sad I am that they are no longer in the format. But this was so that we could keep up with Japanese releases and know which cards were legal for play. So that means that as of April the 5th, 2024, coming up in a few weeks, is going to be the day that the E regulation mark rotates, which means we will be saying goodbye to cards like Battle VIP Pass, we'll be saying goodbye to Path to the Peak Stadium card, and we'll be saying goodbye to Mew VMAX, essentially. Not necessarily the whole deck, but we will be saying goodbye to a pretty big chunk of it. And for some people that's going to be really sad because they rely on like certain decks and things, but yes, we're going to be saying goodbye to cards. Now many of you might be wondering, why does Pokemon do this? And I'm going to tell you exactly why. Pokemon's official website states that during every championship season, Pokemon Organised Play removes older expansions from competition with the goal of maintaining a healthy playing environment. This is so that the standard Pokemon TCG format can keep up to date with all the releases and use the new exciting cards that are going to be released. So with E regulation mark, or sometimes as it's known as E block, is going to be rotating out, that brings that F, G and H are going to be the three blocks that are going to be legal for play. There are some caveats to that rule in terms of certain cards that can still be used even if the regulation mark on the card says E. That may be a little bit confusing, but honestly, stay with me and I will explain exactly what I mean. If we take the card Rare Candy, for example, which is a pretty big staple in a lot of decks right now, we can see that there was one released early Sword and Shield era with regulation mark D, and I will put that here. Now, D block has been out of rotation for quite some time, but because we have a Rare Candy as an updated regulation mark, the name of the card is exactly the same and the text on the card is fundamentally exactly the same, we are allowed to use the Rare Candy from D block in standard play. And that is because the cards are the same, exactly the same, and they do the same thing in the game. Another card that we can look at is the card Judge. Now Judge is also a staple that's in quite a few decks because it resets the hand and gives you something new. Back in 2015 in the XY Breakthrough set, this Judge was released, and it says each player shuffles his or her hand. And that's because that was an old way of typing and speaking that we would use. Now updated, the new judge says each player shuffles their hand. So because this card has the same name, it does the same thing, and the text is fundamentally the same, you are allowed to use the judge from XY Breakthrough in in-person tournaments now. And I will put the official ruling up here because I've looked through the rule book, and this is exactly what it says, what I've just sort of said. If the card name is the same and the text is fundamentally the same, then the cards are allowed to be used. It's always good to check the TCG rule handbook for any updates when cards are released. If you're ever unsure, oh, can I use this card? Does this regulation mark mean that I can use it? What about this? The text doesn't quite match. Always go onto Pokemon's website, and there is a lot of resources that you can find to help you understand the rules of the TCG. Talking about in-person events, 3 weeks today is day 0 of EUIC. And what I mean by that is there is no play going on the Thursday, and we're not even allowed to get into the main event hall on the Thursday. But what we are allowed to do is pick up our badges, pick up our bag if we are competing, as well as being able to hopefully visit the Pokemon Center pop-up store that's going to be at the XL as well. Pokemon are still yet to release the website for how to get reservations for the shop, but please don't worry, I will update this as soon as I can. I will put it on my social media as quick as I can when the website is released, okay? But that means that 3 weeks tomorrow is day 1 of EUIC. And that's an important date because the first day of EUIC is the day that Temporal Forces becomes legal for play. Temporal Forces is going to be released on the 22nd of March, which is next week. So hope you guys have got some pre-orders in, hope you've been enjoying pre-releases, and I know that we're all searching for certain cards to use in our deck for when we play at this big tournament. Standard format sets are always given a 2-week window where you are given basically time to kind of like practice, use the cards, maybe not in an official tournament because the cards are not legal, but say you're practicing with friends or you're playing on TCG Live, which we will get on into in a minute. It gives you the chance to use the cards, practice with them so you can understand what they do, understand what they mean, how it's going to affect your game or your opponent's game, and then when you get to the major tournament, you are all set. So that is why standard format sets always become legal and viable 2 weeks after their release. And this works out very well with Temporal Forces because, as I said, it releases next week, and then 2 weeks after, it's day 1 of EUIC, and we're going to be seeing a lot of cards from Temporal Forces. I know that there's going to be lots of updates to certain decks, there's going to be even brand new decks that are coming out, so it's always good to watch out for that. Speaking of another set that we've just heard about, so today, Thursday the 14th, when I'm making this video, Twilight Masquerade has just been announced is the next set after Temporal Forces, which is going to be released on the 24th of May 2024. And this ties in with another international championship because 2 weeks after that, on the 7th of June, is day 1 of NAIC, the North American International Championships. So you can kind of see why Pokemon releases things at certain times, because they try and fit it in when they know that people are going to be at top tournaments to give them the best chance of playing and the best updated cards. I really hope that makes sense. If anyone's got any questions about sets being released and the timings and why that happens, then please leave a comment below or message me on Instagram. I'm happy to talk to you on any of my social media platforms. Something that I really love to do is create binders. So I've got my lovely binders back here. There's a few gaps, and that's because one of my favorite binders, I can't remember if I did touch on this in my last video, I think I might have. This is my playability binder. And what that is I have separated it into supporters, items, stadiums, energies, and Pokemon. And when I say energies, I don't mean basic energies because I have a lot of packets of those energies you get from the Elite Trainer boxes, but I mean the special energies that you can play. So in my book, you will see I have different places for different bits and pieces, And this is all to do with what cards are legal and what cards may become useful and cards to kind of watch. And the reason I have this is to help me, whether I am doing an event and I think, oh, I need to find a particular card, or maybe one of my cards has got damaged in some way and I need to replace it. That's why I always have my handy dandy binder on me. So I've got lots of nest balls, I've got rare candies, I've got forest seal stones, I've got lots of items. If we go back to my trainers, my first page is literally Iono, Judge, Professor's Research, and then up here I've got my boss's orders. And that is to help me, but also if anyone else is looking for a card, I'm more than happy to help anyone that needs it in a pinch at a tournament if they need help. But let's run through some cards that we are going to have to say goodbye to. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but I definitely feel like these are honourable mentions that need to be said for people that may be playing certain decks that don't really know what's going on. So as we've mentioned, here we have Path to the Peak. So unfortunately, as of April the 5th, this will be no longer legal. We have the lovely Mareep and Fluffy, which was found in a lot of Miraidon decks. These two from Evolving Skies are no longer going to be legal, which is very sad. We have the Shining Arcana Gardevoir. Now this is obviously the Trainer Gallery one, but yes, the regular one as well is not going to be legal for play. And that's something else I should touch on. So sometimes, like with the Trainer Gallery, Pokemon release sets with new cards and older cards with an alternate artwork. So exactly like this Gardevoir, we got this in Astral Radiance. We got this in Astral Radiance. This was released previously in Chilling Rain. But Pokemon are very clever, and both of these cards have the E regulation mark. Now I know you can't really see what they say, but again, I'll put them on the screen. Even though they were released in different sets, they have the same regulation mark because they are the same card, just different artwork. So it's always good to look out for that, okay? Always good to make sure you're looking at the card, looking at the regulation marks and discovering which cards can be used and which can't. Back onto the list of cards, we've got Fog Crystal. Unfortunately, that's our card that's going to be going. We have Level Ball. So the only things you can really use now are Nest Ball, Ultra Ball, and then in Temporal Forces, we're going to be getting Buddy Buddy Poffin, which will help with stuff like Level Ball. We're saying goodbye to Escape Rope, which is always a big thing. We are gaining Prime Catcher as an ace spec, which basically kind of does the same thing, but ace specs are only a one-off in your deck, and Escape Rope used to be 4. We still have Switch, but we don't have a lot of movable counters at the moment, so Escape Rope's going to be missed. And then a last honourable mention is Cross Switcher. Now Cross Switcher was the card where you always had to play 2 of, but again, it was like an Escape Rope and a Boss's Orders in one, because you get to choose with Cross Switcher which Pokemon your opponent will put in, whereas with Escape Rope, they get to choose. And then just like I mentioned earlier, here is the D block rare candy. So this can still be used because we do have an updated rare candy. And here we have Boss's Orders Giovanni, my particular favourite boss. And all the boss's cards has their name right up here. So if I find my Cyrus Boss's Orders right here, his name is up here. Even though the name here is different because obviously it's a different person, the name of the actual card and the text is exactly the same. So depending on which boss you prefer, whether you prefer Cyrus, whether you prefer Giovanni, whoever you prefer, you can use that boss, but please make sure the text and the name matches. Now we're going to talk about one of the games that I really like to play, and that is Pokemon TCG Live. Now, I know there's a big debate on TCG Live. I know that everybody is missing Pokemon Trading Card Online. If you used to play trading card game online, you will understand the sort of pain that we have to go through when it comes to TCG Live, but it's what we've got. it's what we use, and 80% of the time it works. But yeah, it does work really well, and hopefully when we get the new update with the Temporal Forces cards, it will become even better. So TCG Live is the platform where you can play online with the cards that you basically have in your deck at home. So on TCG Live, you are able to play the Pokemon Trading Card game against an opponent, which is really fun. And when you first sign up to the game, if you don't know how to play, it will run you through a little startup bit of how to actually play the game. So this is my game, and it gives you a Pokemon depending on where you are in the ladder. So at the moment I have 320 points. I'm a score bunny, but it does go all the way up to Arceus, which obviously means that you're doing extremely well. This function here allows you to build decks. So basically this deck here is my Charizard deck. If I lower, this is my Charizard deck. And this deck matches exactly what I have in person with my real cards, which is all really cool. And something to know about TCG Live when it comes to the rotation is that it's different for TCG Live than it is in person. TCG Live's rotation is always the day before the set release. And this is to give people a chance who maybe have been to the pre-releases and got some code cards from the box. And then on the 21st of March is going to be the updated rotation on TCG Live for Temporal Forces. And that means on the 22nd, when it releases, everybody that gets their booster boxes, their elite trainer boxes, their 3-pack blisters, whatever it is, with how many code cards you get, you have to input them into TCG Live, and that will be a booster pack for you to open on the game. Now, it doesn't match with the pack that you get in real life, so obviously if you're really lucky and you get to open, say, a special illustration Raging Bolt, which is a fantastic, there's no guarantee that you will get a special illustration Raging Bolt EX in the game, but I can promise you that you do get nice pulls on the game. I've got golds, I've got special illustration rares, I've had alternate arts, I've had rainbows when they were out. It's pretty cool. I will give you a code card now, and this is from the Iron Treads EX Paldean Fates tin. And on TCG Live, you would take this little code. You can either type it in or you can scan the QR code that I am currently covering. And that is how you get cards on the game. There is a facility where you can buy cards on the game, but you need to accrue the coins and the tokens on the game. So as you can see on top here, we have coins, we have gems, and we have tokens. Gems allows you to get rewards. If you're doing well and you get gems, you can unlock certain levels to get packs or outfits for your avatar. These are for buying cards, so the little tokens, when you go into your deck builder, and if you don't own a card but you want to put it in your deck, it will ask you if you would like to exchange your tokens for the card, and depending on the cost of it, then you're allowed to do so. And then the coins is normally for things like buying clothes for your avatar, buying deck accessories, so you can have a deck box, sleeves, and coins. It's really cool. They have thought of everything really that you can have in real life that you can also have on the game. There's no things like playmats or anything like that, but if you guys would like to add me on TCG Live and have some games, my nickname is PixelmonPoke20. If you ever want to add me on the game. It's really fun. I can definitely recommend it. And that's everything I have to say on Pokemon TCG rotation and set legality. I really hope all of that made sense. Let's do a little recap. The reason that the Pokemon Company do rotation is so that we can use the new cards, keep the flow of the sets that are coming out, and create a healthy playing environment. In terms of in-person, rotation is always on a particular date, and then you will often find that for TCG Live on your computer, your tablet or your phone, it will be earlier than that to try and give you time to practice before you go to an in-person event. And then obviously make sure you're looking at your cards for which regulation mark or block they're in, and remember that you cannot use e-block cards from April the 5th, but certain cards like that Rare Candy Emboss that I showed you, because they are the same card as one that's already been released and their text is basically the same, they can be used. But honestly guys, any questions, please message me on social media, comment below, and I'm happy to help. Thank you so much for coming to this video. I am so excited for EUIC. As we said, we are only 3 weeks away until day 0, and I am definitely going to be vlogging the event. I will obviously be playing, so I'll vlog on the bits that I can vlog. But yeah, hopefully I will have some videos for you in between as well. Thank you so much for coming. I've been Pix, this is my happy place, and we'll see you next time. Bye!